Pro 14 this Sunday here in New Zealand, but it's a Saturday game where it's being played. Sees Ulster hosting, I guess technically I think it's being played in Dublin, but technically Ulster's hosting Leinster in the Pro 14. These are the Conference A top dogs with Leinster first and Ulster second. Bit of a difference in the record. I mean, Leinster are still unbeaten, 14 on the trot. Ulster have gone 8 wins, a draw, and 5 losses. One of those losses was to Leinster. They met back in December, which pretty much seems like ancient history right now. But that was a cracking game, 54-42 to Leinster in that one. But yeah, we've had 1 week of Pro 14. The second week has already started. Watched Glasgow and Edinburgh play this morning, at least in my time. Would have been an evening game over in Scotland. And yeah, I think some of the players are still getting back into the swing of things after such a massive layoff. It is going to take a while for the guys to really hit their straps. Some teams have kind of come back faster than others. Now, this is going to be a fascinating one to see which team is sharper, because Leinster has essentially just said, remember those 15 guys that we played last week against Munster in that narrow win? We're just going to change the whole team. Some of the subs are playing, and a lot of them get starts, but man, they just changed the whole team. I know there's depth in that Leinster squad, but man, that's crazy. Ulster are not without the changes, but they've at least kept things a little bit more steady than Leinster have. You guys will have to give me some thoughts into some of these guys, because especially, I guess, some of the second string guys who I might not normally see. I would usually watch these teams playing in the Champions Cup, where for the most part they're playing their top tier guys and their internationals. There's a fair few guys who I'm not very familiar with, so do let me know who else I should be keeping an eye out for. But in terms of Ulster's lineup, they've kept some things similar and some things different. So like O'Sullivan, Herring, and O'Toole, that's a new front row. Sam Carter is also playing as the starting lock this week. He's captain alongside Treadwell. I think he was on the bench last week, Carter, in that narrow loss to Connacht. Ray, Geordie Murphy, and Marcel Coetzee is a pretty useful looking back row. John Cooney is probably my favourite Ulster player. I mean, from what I've seen of Ulster, that guy, at least to the Champions Cup in this most recent edition, has been just phenomenal. Ireland's form number 9, probably. And yeah, man, he just does everything. Kicks the goal, scores the tries, distributes, gets try assists. Yeah, so he's at 9. Madigan's at 10. So it's a bit of a Leinster connection with some of these players. But yeah, Madigan starts this week. I think it was Burns last week. So shifting things up there. McCloskey is still there at 12. Humes at 13. McCloskey is also up there with my favourite Ulster players, I must admit. He's a bit hard done by, but Ireland does have a whole bunch of depth in the midfield. Stockdale's still at fullback with Faddis and Little come in on the wing, so like the Ludic's on the bench and Marty Moore's dropped to the bench, so they have shuffled things a wee bit around for this one. Stockdale, I think he's been pretty much going at fullback for a while now for Ulster, hey, rather than on the wing, so interesting. For Leinster, like I mentioned, they've just changed the whole lineup. All the 15 starters are not playing. So there's no Sexton, there's no James Lowe, there's still no Tyke Furlong. He didn't play last week either. So it's Ed Byrne who's captain. He gets a start. Sean Cronin gets a start. Michael Bent gets a start. Those guys were all on the bench last week. Devon Toner gets a start. He was on the bench last week. Got a yellow card in that game against Munster, but also got a key intercept. So how will he go? Maloney's alongside him. Josh Murphy, Will Connors, and Max Deegan are your back row. Max Deegan is a guy that I'm certainly following. People have been telling me watch Max Deegan for quite some time, and yeah, he does seem to be the business, so good to see him get a start. Gibson Park's 9, and Ross Byrne is 10. And Ross Byrne is always that guy who's kind of living in sixth and shadow, but when he plays, he generally does pretty well. Frawley and O'Loughlin are the midfield. Those are guys that I probably haven't seen as much of. I'm used to seeing more like Henshaw and Ringrose, but you know, it's just because I don't watch enough of the Pro 14 games, to be fair. And Kelleher, Keenan, and Rob Carney are the back three. Likewise, I'm more used to seeing Probably James Lowe, at least on that left wing. Carney, these days I'm more used to seeing Lama, but Carney is certainly a familiar face. I think his contract's up at the end of the year, so good to see him get a start. How long will we see him keep playing for Leinster? That is a question. Ruddock's on the bench, but yeah, ultimately they have shuffled things around a bit. So how sharp these guys are going to be. I mean, like I said, a lot of these guys like Ross Byrne, Gibson Park, Deegan, Connors and Toner and whatnot, they all played from the bench last week, so they should have at least a bit of match sharpness, but perhaps not as much as the Ulster squad. So yeah, we'll see. We will see. They'll desperately want to keep their winning run going, but they've pretty much already, they're already guaranteed top of the log in their pool, in their conference, so they can afford to make 15 changes. For the predictions for this one, the bookies over here in New Zealand have got it pretty much at evens. I think Leinster are like half a point favourites. Whereas a rugby forecast algorithm has also got it being close, but that's tipping Leinster by 1 point. So yeah, I am looking forward to this one. I'm hoping it'll be a slightly better game than the Edinburgh-Glasgow one I watched this morning, which was a bit lackluster at times. It had a lot of scrums and a lot of resets and a bit of rust, but they had a bit of a cracking game last week, so maybe you can't do it 2 weeks in a row. I don't know. So yeah, let's hope these two teams are sharp. Bit of good rivalry to get us kicked off, at least here in New Zealand. It will be a Sunday morning, so that will be a bit of fun. But for you guys, probably it's a today game for you where you are when you wake up. But yeah, do let me know who else I should be looking out for both teams. What are your predictions? Do you see Leinster's run going on, or do you think Ulster can play spoiler to that perfect record? Anyway, you guys have been your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.